very, very obvious, even from the beginning. And to the average person at that conferee, and that is the fact that they were not in a position to actually determine what happens with their report. And that is the critical thing. That ultimately at the end, because we've had all kinds of conferences. We had the Obasanjo, conference, constitutional conference, and all others in the past and so on. And what people wondered was what was going to be different about this. You have the same kind of system, you have the same kind of political elites also driving, the politics of this country, and the same kind of people with whatever motivation they have are the ones behind this conference. Yes, I agree that there was that need for us to talk. Otherwise, generally we talk with other means that will be very, very unsavory, for the country. But like I said, it was always a known fact that the eventual outcome of that conference will depend on the disposition, the magnanimity and the benevolence of the National Assembly and perhaps some other principal people in government. So what it means, and I think that is the key thing. The pastor has been wonderful, he's spoken well and so on, but he said, well, all is well that ends well. But the reality is that the conference has not ended. In terms of the deliberation, in terms of all those things that were arrived at, if you do not have a conclusion that Nigerians, are expecting, it will be 10 billion naira sunk down the drain. And that conclusion can only be that you take some of these things, because, there were issues that came up, issues that were trashed. The issue of the police, whether you have state police and the rest, some of them seemed okay, at least in the context of the discourse on Nigeria's politics today. But again, if at the end of the day, though I'm also aware that the issue of devolution, which was also very, very key to virtually all the discussions that we'll be having in this country, was also not settled. That brought about a lot of problems in the country. And at the time, it would appear that Nigeria was divided between the North and the South. I agree that some of them are now speaking more or less with one voice, but perhaps they know exactly what they're saying, but again, it could be a feeling of guilt.
Let me interject here. I'm sorry. Let me interject here. Somebody gave me a project and said, make me a watch. And he said, this is the kind of watch I want, make it really good. And I made it, and it cost 10 billion.
Yeah.
And I deliver. Would you say, when you look at that watch, is it good or is it bad? Or would you say because it was not used, it's never good anyway? Where I'm going with this is, they've been given an assignment. Would you say that they've delivered, members of the National Conference, have they delivered what Nigerians and the government of Nigeria expected of them? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, look at
where we take it after that will be a secondary.
Looking at your analogy with the watch, it depend. They say it is said that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder.
Okay.
So if the man, and they say he who pays the piper dictates the tune. So if a man contracts somebody to build a watch for him, I think it is it is whether other people outside of that arrangement feel that watch was well built or not. It's not the business of any other person, but the man who contracted, because
but did you know the mandates that they were given?
No, where I'm going is this. I want to tie it to the issue, because the watchmaker in this sense would be Mr. President, who gave a job.
No, he is the one that commissioned, not the watchmaker. The National Conference will be the watchmaker. They've been commissioned to. They have a list of things to achieve. Nigerians know what they've been asked to achieve.
Yes.
So
the man who contracts the watchmaker is the president. Now, the reality is that the president is not acting on his own. The president cannot act on his own. The president acts on behalf of the people, based on the template that is on ground, based on the feelings of the people with regards to any project that the political leadership want to embark upon. That is the essence of leadership. So you must feel the pulse of the people before you want to do things that are... Okay, but again, I agree that Nigerians had to talk. We arrived at, there was no doubt about that. And then he brought in people that had to talk. But at the end of the day, it would appear again that even when this thing, the watchmakers in this sense, submit their products to the president says, look, I am not too sure that this watch will be okay, or this watch would do exactly what I commissioned them to do. So let me appoint 61 other wise men who will now look at this watch to determine how good this watch is. And that is exactly where we are. The president is said, is appointing a committee or setting up a committee to look at what has been done.
I'm going to interject you again. Yeah. What I'm trying to get you to confirm is your assessment of the work that has been done by the National Conference. We're not at that bridge where we will determine what we'll do with the work that they've done. But first, let us even assess what they've done. What's your own assessment? I think
they did a lot of work. I think they did a lot of work.
Great. Now
I think they did a lot of work. They put a lot into it.
Yes.
There is no doubt about that. And some of the resolutions, I had said it here earlier, that there were some things that were germane to the Nigerian situation. Talked about state police, the issue of local government councils and so on. Some of these things were quite okay. There was the issue of the creation of over 50 states and so on that was not in any way in tandem with the feeling of the Nigerian people and with the reality that is on ground and so on. But I think it was more or less a matter of, political compromise that they had to seek. If you look at all the indices on ground, really, there is no basis for anybody. And I don't want to go really into the merits of creation of states. That is not what we're talking about. But it was also fundamental. Creating, with all the myriads of social, political, economic problems that we have in this country, they come up with that kind of. I don't think that was really in tandem with the direction that the country should be going into. But
so overall,
beyond that, I think they did a lot of work. They did a lot of work.
Would you say good work? You're not too.
It was fair.
It was fair.
It was fair.
Okay, I see Pastor
okay.
Bakari was trying to say something about this.
A man returned from battle and said, while in battle, I killed 6,000 people. And as he was going to his house, he stepped on 12 chickens at the same time and killed all the 12. And he said, if you don't see the one at the battlefront, you see the one at home. Truth be told, if he had been there, he would not say it the way I spoke it. Believe me, cream de la cream of Nigerians gathered together for almost 5 months. I heard him say, who pays the piper dictates the tune. Let the record be checked properly. There were some of us who did not take a penny of the allowance deliberately so that we can focus and nobody will say tomorrow, it is money they paid you that made you go this way. But let's leave that alone. What are the issues here? Mr. President in his inaugural speech said, we must relaunch our country. We debated that speech for almost a month. Some thought it was a waste of time. We thought so at the beginning. But at the end of the day, we were able to feel the pulse of Nigerians, east, west, north, and south. Let me take the issue of state creation that he said Nigerians were not expecting. To the best of my, if I recall very well, to the best of my knowledge, the Southwest Yoruba people went with one agenda, one important agenda amongst others, regionalism. Let the zones become the federating units. All the states are just a lot of waste. In terms of, in the past, the northern region had one Minister of Education, or Commissioner of Education as they're called now. Just one Minister of Education for Western region. Today they have 19 Commissioners of Education. If we can reduce the federating units to zones, that will be it. We'll save a lot of money. That was the agenda we pushed in. I happen to have been put in restructuring and forms of government committee headed by Janaike Wachugu and his co-chair, Honorable Kumalia. About 35 of us were there, ambassadors, professors, former governors. And when we began to push the agenda for regionalism and for the zones to become the federating units, you began to hear sound and genuine opinions, to start with from the southeast and then from the north. I remember a retired general who said, "You don't know what we're